Good evening, everybody. Tom Kowalski speaking on behalf of the Sausalito Yacht Club. This is a continuation of our speaker series. As you can tell, we're doing this via Zoom. This is a good example of how technology keeps us together. Dawn Riley is in Oyster Bay, New York. I'm in Sausalito, California. Russell Oast is in Hawaii. And all of you are probably spread around parts of California. This really came about from showing the movie Maiden at the Yacht Club a number of weeks ago. So special thanks and tip of the hat to Lorraine Weiss, who could not be here tonight, and also Russell for putting that together. I'll make it brief. Dawn Riley is not just a sailor. She's a superb sailor with a resume that I think would be envious of anyone, truth be told. I'll make it brief and she'll comment about other things she's done. She was a junior Commodore at the age of 14. Okay, she sailed around the world in Whitbread races, one on Maiden, and she was a skipper on Heineken. She was watch captain on Maiden. She's been involved in various America's Cup. And she also, in 1999, was the Rolex Sailor of the Year. So kindly welcome to the Sausalito Yacht Club lecture series, Dawn Riley.
Thank you. Virtual applause. So tonight it's going to be kind of casual, and I'm really happy that you're doing it with the Zoom way that I can hear and see people, so I can see reactions. And I am totally open to people interrupting me, and you put it in the chat, or you can just shout out and say, hey, what about? Because I feel like this is, well, you guys, it's cocktail hour. For me, it's almost bedtime. Oh, there we go. Somebody's got a cocktail. I want it to be like we're just hanging out and having a big dinner conversation over a glass of wine. I'm going to go over my background a little bit. I'm going to show a few videos, talk about what I'm doing here at OakCliff Sailing, and then touch a little bit on the future. And I think it's the future of sailing is brighter than many people think. I think everybody coming out of COVID tends to be a little bit negative and a little bit exhausted, but I see great things happening. So my background is I grew up in Michigan. I was, my sister Dana lives in San Rafael and races a lot out there. She's a little bit younger than me. My brother, very little bit younger than me, a year and a half. My brother's 5 years younger. He lives in Grosse Pointe now with 3 beautiful children and a wife and like the perfect life. But we grew up in Michigan in the Great Lakes, and we went with our family for a year from Detroit when I was 13, from Detroit out the Barge Canal, up to New York City, up to Maine, down to Florida, the Bahamas, the Virgins, Grenada, and back. So 1 year and 7 days on the boat. And that I always look back to as the year that changed my life. Everybody has that. And that is part of the reason I'm going to talk a little bit more about True Youth, which you guys have helped, whether you realize it or not, because it was a while ago, with getting individuals into the sport of sailing and expanding their horizons. Being at that middle school age where you are interested in your future, there is one, but you're still open to anything, any possibility, is a really critical time. I came back and somebody asked me if I want to go sailing. I was 14 years old by then. And these really old people that were, 30, and they had an Etchells, and they said, do you want to go sailing? And I'm like, I guess so. And I came back and I told my parents, I'm like, they weren't very good. I'm a lot better than them. This is cool. I want to go sailing a lot. And I basically accosted everybody and anybody that had a boat to allow me to go sailing and go racing with them. So I say briefly, I became obsessed with the sport. And then, of course, I needed a summer job. I had to go to college. So I started to get paid to go sailing. So by today's definition, I have been a professional sailor since I was 15 years old. Those days, it was like, I got enough money so I can eat dinner. So a little bit different definition in the old days. But I started working on and around boats. I worked for North Sails, for Hood Sails. I worked for Burr sailboats. I installed electronics. I cleaned boat bottoms. I made sandwiches. I did everything I possibly could. And I paid my way through college 100%. And then there was a recession and didn't get a job. So I went and kept doing what I had been doing. And then when I was down there, there was a friend, and if you guys have seen the movie, that's what I was referring to. She's like, Dawn, there's a group of women going around the world. You should sail with them. Now, remember, all that time that I was going, you know, from 13, starting to race on, I had sailed with so few women. And I was like, I'm not going to sail with a bunch of women. I was like, are you crazy? And she recognized the arrogance of youth and said, you know, get over yourself. For surely in the whole wide world, there's other women that can race. And she was right. And that's how I joined Maiden. Got an interview, went over, stretched, pushed my hand through the ceiling accidentally. And they're like, oh, she's strong, we'll take her. That literally was my tryout. And then I came back, and again, a little bit arrogance, but why not keep pushing it? And also planning. I wanted to do the America's Cup. So I went and tried to try out with Dennis Conner. He said, oh, we don't need ladies on our boat. And then I ended up trying out and making it for the America Cube team. So Bill Koch, I was the only female on the team, 1992, and we won. Then there was Heineken, which is there's a book written about it, but there had been a mutiny, and the sponsor of the event said, well, do the race. We'll keep the boat in the race in Uruguay, but you need to get Dawn. And they called me in Michigan, and I was at home, and within 3 phone calls, this is, remember, before cell phones, I just want to remind you. So they called my mom's house, who I happened to be there for dinner, and said, we need Dawn to do the race next Saturday, around the world next Saturday. And then I called Jenny Mundy's mother in England, and she said, oh, Jenny's having dinner at Claire's house in the Isle of Wight, and Marie Claude's there. So I got 4 crew members in 2 phone calls. And then we went down to Uruguay and raced around the world. We lost our rudder 3 times, so that didn't make us fast. But when we had a rudder, we were really fast. And then I came back and did the women's team, which of course was America Cubed as well. And then the watershed for me was America True, which Sausalito Yacht Club was part of. You're a true ally. And that was, from that experience, I said, you know what? I want to do a team that's diverse. I want to do a team that has women on it. I want to do a team that we can do so much better. The all women's team was fine, but it was almost artificial. And I'm going to get to the video here in a second. It was almost artificial because it was a team that was put together of people that had never sailed together. If you're a bunch of sailors, you put together the team with the people that you've been growing up with, that you've been sailing with. And because they were trying to force an all women's team, it was a strange combination. I wanted to put together a team of just the best person for the job. And I believed that if all you did was evaluate every single person as neutral, gender neutral as possible, you would end up with a solid mixed team. And that's exactly what happened. We had 25% women about, and some higher, some lower, in every single area, from the designers to the boat builders, to the sail makers, to the office staff, to the accounting, and of course, on the water. And that team is still my favorite team ever. Working to try to make the next America's Cup team reflect a little bit of that, but we'll get to that in a minute. And then I went mercenary after that and went and did the French team, where I was the general manager of the French team in Spain. And that was interesting. An American woman in charge of a bunch of French men. Let me just take a minute, and I'm going to show and share the screen video that you will, if you've seen the movie, you'll recognize some of the footage. This is a compilation of the first 4 events. So Maiden, Heineken, America Cube, the men's team plus me, and America Cube, the women's team plus Dave. And I'm just going to talk through it a little bit. So let's just try to share the screen. Go here, share. There. So Maiden, 1980s, the world was pink. These are the IACC boats in San Diego. The first time those boats were used in competition. And it was also the first time people in San Diego realized there was an event, because it was right in the harbor. That was coming in on Maiden into Fort Lauderdale and dancing through the Southern Ocean. Heineken, the Volvo 60, again pioneering. That was the very first Volvo 60 built. Go a little bit nuts in the America's Cup and around the world. Buddy and Bill Koch fighting over the wheel, and that little Boston whaler. Dave Dellenbach, John Polius, had some unbelievable coaches. Spinnakers are about 5,000 square feet. I wonder how many tiny homes that is. That's a lot of tiny homes. America's Cup match racing is really fun, but the adrenaline of being at the end of a boom in the Southern Ocean is right up there as well. That's going 30 knots, and that's approach. So if you tilt your head, you can see the horizon. That's how much we were tipping over. That's that guy, Dennis Conner. Tom Whidden's nice, though. He's very nice. I think the highest speed we ever hit was 38 knots. That's from the top of the mast, slamming through. That was actually like a 30-foot wave. We were sailing amongst the icebergs, which we don't do anymore because nowadays we know where they are. Dennis's mast, $500,000. The French dropped their boat literally off the crane and then were surprised when the keel fell off. And of course, the Australians being the only boat to actually sink during an America's Cup race. The sponsors in Australia capitalized on it, and there were ads the next day. Nothing goes down better than a Foster's. And you guys are all old enough to know that Foster's is beer. When I tell that joke with the kids, I have to explain it. The New York Yacht Club painted their boat to look like a mermaid to guerrilla market and counteract the women who in that photo were doing a yo play ad. We don't hike with our ankles crossed. It was just for the television cameras. Maiden was a fat and aluminum boat. That's going to come into my next story. That was the third time she'd gone around the world. These were high-tech graphics in the 90s. And of course, we had to go see Minnie Mouse when we got to Florida. That's us ahead of Dennis. Gloria getting some help off of the rudder, and we gave her some dish soap to wash her hair. Susie Leach, who I will be sailing with this weekend, she got 6 stitches when she did that. She did it twice. That is New Zealand, my favorite place in the world to sail. So we can already answer that question. New Zealand is definitely my favorite place to sail. They did a pretty good job this last year with COVID as well. So I wanted everybody that I can see, did you guys see the movie? Maiden, just raise your hand or nod. Yeah. Okay, somebody didn't. So I'm giving you a little, actually this doesn't spoil it all. So there's one thing, first of all, the movie is almost all of the footage, with the exception of like a couple of rolling shots that they used once or twice, was all taken from the race. So that was amazing to have the real footage in a documentary. There's no Hollywood, there's no soundstage down in Tijuana. It's like, it was real. The story is clearly the story about Tracy Edwards, and I was a spoiler. So they didn't really want me in the movie, but then they had trouble. And not that it looks that great right now, but if you watch it again, you'll notice that everybody else had hair and makeup except for me. I was very bitter about that. That's the only time I go, girl. But there was one part that sailors watch, and every time I've done the showing like in the theater probably 20 times, and sailors will always ask this: when the boat was sinking around the Falkland Islands, was the water really coming in through the mast? And the answer is no. But I'm going to tell you what was happening, and then you'll understand, because it's going to take me like 3 or 4 minutes, why they couldn't take 3 or 4 minutes of Hollywood movie time to explain it. So what was happening, so we'd come around Cape Horn. Tracy had not remembered the correct charts and the tidal charts. So she was afraid of the fact, it'd be like going through the Golden Gate and not knowing which way the tide's going, right? So she kept going out. The problem was, and she does reference this, she didn't tell us what was going on. We were just trusting the navigator. And so she just, because she was so worried about not having the charts for the tidal charts, she didn't look forward about the wind direction. And we knew with the weather facts, the way the wind was going to go. So what she basically did is she reached us out so that we could beat towards the finish. And beating inside of the Falkland Islands on, trying to stay off of a lee shore with current, which was, I don't even know how much the current was, probably 4 knots, significant, and 60 knots of wind across your bow. It was basically probably about 80 degrees true, is a miserable situation to be in. And so we were doing it, we're slogging it away. And I was coming off of watch. I've been up for 4 hours. And Jojo, the cook, she goes, Dawn, there's salt water in the freshwater tanks. I was like, oh, crap, because I was also the engineer. So I was like, I must have screwed up the water maker. Maybe the bashing, dislodged a filter or something. So we pump all the water out. And I spend the next 4 hours, my off watch, sleeping forward at the mast on the floor around the water maker, checking to make sure that the water's sweet. I go on deck, get dressed for my watch. So this is 8 hours in. I get dressed for my watch. I'm like, Joe, we're good. We've got water. Go ahead and make the coffee, get some freeze-dried food and everybody. And I'm steering, and 4 hours later, so now we're 12 hours in really miserable conditions. She goes, it's salty again. I'm like, crap, I can't go on. I need to get some sleep. I said, let me get a couple hours sleep and then you can wake me up. I'm sorry, you guys, you're not going to be able to have coffee this watch. We'll sort it out, later. So I go to sleep. And that's when 2 hours later, Tracy notices that there's water in the bilge coming up under her feet. So we're sinking. And they wake me up, and you can see me like trying to get out of the bunk in the video. And I'm like, holy crap. And knowing that the boat was aluminum, knowing that it was the 3rd time around the world, knowing that we just come out of the Southern Ocean in heat and cold, so cold contracts, knowing that we were pounding the crap out of the boat, my first inclination was, we've split the hull on the underside of the water tanks, because the water tanks were welded into the hull. So I'm thinking that we split the skin and the salt water is coming into the tank, filling it up with salt water, and then it's coming through a fitting somewhere into the bilge. So that was where I was going. So we moved all the sails, we stopped the boat, and I'm crawling around in the bilge trying to find with the water tanks, looking at the hoses and the connections and everywhere to try to see where there might be water coming into the boat. And as I'm on my belly in the back, I look up and there's supports for the cockpit floor. And there's this little nubbin that goes up there. I'm like, what the hell is that? I've never noticed that before, because I knew where the vent was down below, and it was on the side of the boat for the air to come out. When you fill up the water tank, of course, you need water in, you need air out. And I was like, what is that? So I go up and I followed up into the cockpit. It was a vent, an air vent that we didn't know was there, that was going up into a seat locker. And the thing is that we had never heeled over before in the whole race, and we had never had that much water filling up the leeward cockpit and filling up the seat locker. So essentially, we were siphoning salt water from the ocean into the cockpit, into the seat locker, down into the tank, filling up the tank with salt water, and then out the interior vent. So that is what happened. So if that drove you crazy during the movie, now you know. But it was much easier for them to have our shore manager, Howard, go, it was coming in through the mast. And then they move on. So that's the only Hollywood part. I want to just take a second to talk about the impact that that event and the women's team made. Because before I was jumping to America True, and I will come back to America True and where we're at OakCliff, and American Magic and some of the other things that we're doing. The time between 1989 Maiden, where most people in America didn't really know, more people in America by far know about it because of the film, because that was the first time it stopped, the Whitbread race stopped in America. It was early days of ESPN. That's how I met Gary Jobson that got me onto the first America's Cup team. But people didn't really know about it. The Women's America's Cup team was really what changed a lot of people. And I'm starting to get to the point in my life where I'm seeing the full circleness. I did an event out in Mattatuck Sunday, and there was a woman that introduced herself as, I got into sailing because of you. And she said, my dad sailed, he wanted me to sail. I didn't want to sail. I was like, no, 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 girls don't sail. And he said, come watch this. And he watched the America's Cup, made her watch the America's Cup with the women's team. And she said, okay. And then they got a female coach to help. And now she's obsessed with sailing, and she's not that much younger than me. So it's amazing how those things come full circle. There's another story about that event as well that I'll talk about in a minute. But that really was the time where fathers could tell their daughters, yes, you can, where wives or girlfriends could tell their husbands or boyfriends when they said, no, we don't want women on the boat to race. They could go, yeah, have you raced in the America's Cup lately? Because those girls have. So it gave women power, and it also worked with the Olympics in Atlanta. The Women's Olympics. Most people don't remember, but we did, because we were in the sports world, that there was a team of farm league baseball players, not softball, baseball, called the Silver Bullets that Coors Light sponsored. So there was a huge change in the mid 90s. It was just amazing. And I'm lucky to have been part of that. And I'm starting to see the world change. Two quick stories that I don't know how many people have heard me speak before on this one, but I have told these stories before because they're relevant. In 1992, it was foggy in San Diego and cold. They have fog too. It just goes out to sea, and all the people on the beach don't see the fog, but all of us sailors get it. And we would come in after sailing. We all lived at corporate apartments, and we'd jump in the hot tub because we were freezing. And it wasn't long before the single women in the complex noticed that there were a whole lot of really fit guys jumping in the hot tub every night. So they would all of a sudden be in the hot tub too. And I'd be sitting there, and they would be flirting with the guys. And, what do you do? I'm a grinder. I'm a trimmer, blah, blah, blah. And then there's this woman that said she sailed, and she was a nurse, and she sailed. And I think it was Johnny Mack goes, Dawn races with us too. She goes, what? And I'm like, yeah, I do the pit. She looked really confused. And then she goes, oh, you make the sandwiches. I was like, no. And I think Rock Ferrigno almost drowned. He was laughing so hard in the hot tub. So that was the image in 1992. Jump forward to 1995 when we'd had the America's Cup team. We had that horrible race where we were ahead of Dennis Conner by 6 minutes and 43 seconds or whatever. And he jibed over to the shore, caught the very late sea breeze, and came rolling back. And we had an A0 up, and he had an A1, and he beat us by about a half a boat length to go to the America's Cup. So everybody thought we were winning, and then all of a sudden we lost. After that, I was over at the Team New Zealand camp, because that's where my fiance or boyfriend, I don't know, no longer neither, but a guy I was dating was over there. And I was waiting for him to get out, and this homeless guy walks up with his cart and the whole deal. He goes, are you one of those girls? I'm like, America's Cup sailor? He goes, yep. He goes, you know what? God wanted you to lose. I was like, really? And I go, how do you figure? He said, well, God knows that the Kiwis are faster. Okay. And God really doesn't like Dennis Conner, but he likes you. And he wants Dennis to lose to the Kiwis, not the women. I was like, okay, thank you very much. And the reason why I tell those two bizarre stories is because in just 3 short years, we went from a female sailor who couldn't understand how it was possible for a woman to be on an America's Cup unless she was making the sandwiches, to a homeless guy rather randomly justifying why we had lost that race in the America's Cup. So that to me is an interesting bit of progress. I do want to have some question and answer, but I want to just talk about 2 more things. One is America True, and I want to go full circle back again, because we wanted to be the diverse team. and there weren't people that we could pull from. We could find women, but we could not find very much racial diversity at all to join our team. So what we did, and what you guys were part of as well, was something called True Youth. You guys were true allies. So we had 28 clubs that we flew your Burgee into battle every day we went into the America's Cup. And all we asked was that you would follow us, be fans, donate, of course, if you would like to. But the most important thing was we wanted you to do at least one True Youth event a year, which is where you go into the areas that had no access to the sport and pull them out. So for you guys, Marin City, we did some programs with Sausalito Yacht Club in Marin City. And we called it, we had Rocking the Boat. So we had, I don't even know how many kids we took through that program. When we finished that program, there was a handful of groups that continued the same message, some new programs that started. And there was a new group in New York City called Rocking the Boat. And our trademark lawyer said, they're using your trademark. So I called them up and they panicked. And I had to talk them off the ledge and say, no, you're doing exactly what we want you to do. So we're going to license the trademark to you for $1. And so they have a program that they run in New York City. They build boats, they go sailing. And when I was in Mattituck, there was a woman who went through Rocking the Boat. She was one of our volunteer coaches for a True Youth Adventure Sail Day. And she is now running the outreach program for Sail GP for Team USA. So it's amazing to see. It takes a while, but 20 some years later, we're seeing those young kids coming up and being part of OakCliff and being part of Sail GP and being part of the America's Cup and around the world. And we're going to see more and more and more of that. I don't want people to get discouraged because it does take a long time, but it does work. It literally does work. And I want to thank you guys for being part of that. And I'm just going to jump ahead a little bit. Terry Hutchison was here from American Magic, and they were one of our partners at OakCliff. And we had a really nice conversation where he chatted with all of the kids we have in our World Match Racing Tour camp. And we talked about it later. And I think you're going to see American Magic doing more outreach. They're not going to be as New York Yacht Clubby, if that's an adjective. They're going to be more all of us and more open to the public and doing more outreach. And that's where partners like us and Sail Newport and Iris really are helping them to help all of us to do good for the sport. So let me just talk a little bit about what we're doing here at OakCliff. For those of you that the people around the very beginning heard that I've had a heck of a day. I was planning on being home at my house with proper lighting and not with the sail loft in the back and the donor board and this office. But basically about 11 years ago, I got a call. I was doing fun stuff like super yacht sailing. And I got a call and they said, we have some boats and we don't know what to do with them. And we have a little bit of funding. It was this family called the Lawrence family. And we're in Oyster Bay, New York. We'd like you to come out and take a look. So I came out and I was doing consulting. I consult for marina developments and business and do corporate speaking and everything. And so I did a plan for them, an analysis and a research project and a business plan. And I thought, okay, I'm done. I'm going to go sailing again. And they said, no, we need you to come out here to run it. And then they used good Catholic guilt and said, it's going to be all for naught if you don't show up. So I said, okay, I'll do 3 years. 11 years later, I'm here. And I'm going to share a video just so you can see what it is that we do. Now, let me warn you, this video is slightly old because we just have been so busy, we haven't redone it. But I will go ahead and... Oh, nope, that's not it. This one. I will go ahead and let you see what it is that OakCliff is. So we're a training and coaching center in Oyster Bay, New York. Originally, we said we don't want to have anything to do with the Olympics because U.S. Sailing has that. that has changed for sure. We are generally big boats in this beautiful bay that's only 12 miles as the crow flies from New York City. And it's like you're in this natural, well, 80% of the oysters come from Oyster Bay, this natural playground. We have 3 harbors we can race in within 10 minutes of our mooring field. We, in the beginning, didn't do a lot of offshore. Then we got a class 40. Then we started the OakCliff All-American Offshore team. And now Mark Towell and Charlie Enright are working on their 3rd Volvo or ocean race. This is where we have now 4 FAR 40s, a class 40, 3 curb boats, Jules Vrolik 66, OC 86. We'll talk about the Mackinac race in a minute. We have 102 boats. So one of my jobs was to stop the family from collecting boats. Instead, OakCliff collects boats. We train young people from 15 up to 68 is our oldest. And we, because of what we do, we have a lot of diversity, a lot of women, but they break stuff. So we teach them how to fix the stuff they break. So all of a sudden we're an apprenticeship program, and we have people throughout the industry at North Sales, Quantum Sales, Southern Spars. And then after 2012, we got into the Olympics. We now have a fleet of 9 49ers, 9 FX, 6 foiling NACRA 17s. We have a few non-foiling that are for sale if anybody's interested. We have a couple NACRA 20s. And then we have the match racing boats, the match 40s. We have 12 of these, and we use them for match racing, but also for fleet racing and coaching. Then we needed a place to put people, so we have a bunkhouse with 43 bunks, and we finally figured out that Tuesday room inspections will get you so that the rooms are almost that clean once a week for at least 10 minutes. But you try to put 43 kids in a program. The ultimate though, is that we are building American leaders through sailing. And that is our goal. That is our mission. That goes through every single thing that we do. The programs that we have right now are called Acorn or sapling programs. And as you can imagine, everybody's like, how did that happen? Well, it's because we were doing oak cliff, like an oak tree on a cliff, excuse me. One of our coaches, Mike, it's raining down and my windows are, the keys are in the ignition where I always leave them. Thanks, Hayden. I told you I was still at work. I drive a hybrid. One day I left the keys in, left it running, ran it out of gas and battery. That was a fun day. Anyway, so where was I? So we have Hayden, who's a Kiwi, who's here. He's a guest coach for our match racing program, and it's in partnership with the World Match Racing Tour. We then are partners with American Magic. Robin Lesh is part of their design team. Sean is part of their grinders. So that's there. We already talked about Mark and Charlie. And then the Olympics are the final frontier where we really need to work harder. Everybody who, in our classes that we have here, everybody who trained at OakCliff went to the games. They didn't do as well as possible, but let me point out one thing to you. The NACRAs. U.S. Sailing did not fund the NACRAs at all. They determined that that was a class that wasn't really going to do well. They trained here, and they, with our coaching, became a team. And I'm going to try not to get choked up. I talked them through how if they worked together, that on the last day of the trials, one team was going to be extremely happy. Everybody else was going to be extremely disappointed. But the disappointment was going to fade pretty quickly because they would know in their hearts that they were part of that team going to the Olympics. And if you look at the press release, Riley Gibbs said that. So go back and look at the press release when he made the medal race and they ended up 9th, I believe. He said, this is better than anybody thought we were going to do, but it's because of the other people. So that is where we're trying to go. And we're trying to instill that into leadership, into the American sailors. We're also, sometimes some of our dinghy sailors they're a little bit wimpy. They don't know how to work hard. So when they're running around back here and I'm like, what are you doing? There's good wind. And they're like, oh, I need to rest and recover. I'm like, screw that. You need to go sailing. Get your butts out of here. I don't want to see you again. Or I have something you can clean. And then they go out sailing. So I'm not a parent, but I feel like I am often. I think what I'm going to just do now is we're going to open up. You can put it in the, I can see there's a couple of things here. I'll answer those questions in a minute. Let's go here. So a suggestion about increasing racial diversity in sailing. It takes a long time, 20 years, it takes time. The easiest way for a leadership, okay, let's start. I'm trying to tailor it for where you guys are. The first thing is you cannot just go and get somebody who's never sailed, no matter what racial, gender, anything, and just say, let's go sailing. We want to help you go sailing, because you're going to shove them into a program. And I know early on when Dan Leninger, who was with America True, was there running, and the very beginning when we did True Youth, and Ray Kuhn, that you're shoving them into a group of people that know what a bow is. When they were 2, they heard their parents telling dirty stories about, sailing and drinking and, moonlight sails or something. So they have all this innate knowledge that a kid who's never seen a boat has no idea. So that's where, when the program we did with Fish and with Marin City and Performing Stars, those programs, when you're doing it to pull people in at the younger levels, is you need to let it flow. So on a day down at Fish in Sausalito, I think the restaurant's still there, they learned about sushi. And so that day, we spent most of the day with them tasting seaweed off of the dock, because they had never even considered you could eat seaweed. So then all of a sudden there was a whole new farm for them. And we're like, okay, sailing's not important. Sailing's not the important part. It's the lifestyle. It's the following your dream. It's the pushing your passion. So that's the first thing. Start and go with it and be flexible. The second part is that when you're opening up in a leadership like here, don't get me wrong, the kids drive me crazy. They ask a bazillion questions. And I've learned to say, when they go, can we do this? Can we take this boat and go sail to Newport? I'm like, I don't know. Can you? What's the schedule? What's the budget? Who's going to pay for it? Where are you going to sleep? What are you going to eat? So I never say, no, you cannot. I try not to ever say, no, you cannot. I always say, I don't know. Tell me, show me how. You've got the power. You've got the knowledge. If you don't figure it out, there's this thing called the Google, and you tell me how far it is to Newport. I know, but I don't need to tell you. You can figure it out. So, and then the final thing is when you're talking about classes of people who are underrepresented in your sport or your business, if they don't see the leadership there and they don't know it, they've been told from the time that they were conscious of differences that they cannot. That means that you as a leader, and I talked about this with Terry just yesterday, I say you must ask them 3 times harder and more often. Because the first time is going to be, oh, no, I can't. Oh, no, I don't think so. Really? Can I? So you have to put that effort in, and there's nothing wrong with it. You just have to put the extra effort in. Do you guys really want to talk about what? I look at the next question. It says, what do you wear?
Yeah, I'm very interested.
Okay. When I first did it, we were 1 step above Shackleton. We couldn't eat our boots because they weren't made out of real leather. But synthetics were a whole new thing. Polypropylene was literally still, I think, partially chopped up water bottles, and I was allergic to some of the chemicals on there. So I wore silk, and we always say, I always joke that we would wear 4 layers. So literally the layers would be 4 layers of long underwear, then some kind of a mid-layer fleece, or back then we had wool sweaters. Then you would wear an inner waterproof, because foul weather gear wasn't that waterproof. So in the Southern Ocean, that would be a full dry suit. And then you'd put your foul weather gear over your dry suit for warmth and for protection, so you wouldn't get your dry suit to leak. And we would change, we wouldn't shower, of course, or bathe, because why would you? That's slow. That we used to literally do it, but it sounds funny. We would change our clothing on Sunday, but that would mean that we would take the inner long underwear and put it on the outside of the floor. And of course, I already mentioned that I could only wear silk long underwear, and I only had one pair of silk because that's all I could afford. So I didn't change my underwear for a month, but I survived. It's okay. I'll tell you who loves that. 12-year-old boys. You tell them that at school, they think that's the best thing ever. They all want to sail around the world, so they don't have to change their underwear for a month. Nowadays, it's gotten so much better. We're sponsored by Gill, and we endorse Gill. We would never take money from a corporation or a product in the technical side of it. Maybe from Starbucks or something, but not from a technical supplier unless we endorse it and we believe it. And I really like the Gill products for a few reasons. One, all foul weather gear is going to wear out, and Gill is a good price point. So you can redo it if you need it. You know, if it lasts for 8 years, you're pretty good, and the price point's good. The second thing is that they are designed by women. There's 4 of the 5 designers are women. So it is the only clothing that I have ever had that is designed and fits as a woman. Now they have hydrophobes. You can get those at Patagonia or whatever. The waterproof puffy jackets are amazing. And then they have what I call my sleeping bag pants, which is a mid layer, which feels like you're wearing a sleeping bag. That's amazing. I'm looking over here because our retail store is over here. And then, yeah, they have some, the drop seat foul weather gear. The drop seat foul weather gear, I always thought was, I sail like a guy, I pee like a guy. Oh no, I don't. I was like, I sail like a guy, I can wear the guy's clothing, I don't need women's clothing, I don't need a drop seat. That's stupid. I tried them. Oh my God, game changer. You can be strapped in your harness, peeing over the back. Nobody knows, because in the front, it's all business. In the back, it's all secret. So that's something that I highly recommend. And obviously they are designed for women, so they fit well. On the clothing issues, we never wear neoprene. Of course, we don't sail in San Francisco Bay where it's cold, because the wetsuits, you have to be wet for them to work. The key is to stay dry. And when you're going offshore or you're going out in the fog, if you can stay dry, and that includes not sweating, so it's not layering up too soon, so you start sweating and not getting wet. If you can stay dry, you're going to be more comfortable the whole time. So what we try to do when we're going offshore is we have every pack so that when it's the absolute coldest, we're wearing everything in our sea bag, and we have one Ziploc. It's the only time I let plastic on the boat, really, as much if I can help it. One Ziploc bag with a spare set of long underwear, socks, and often like a washcloth just to get the salt off your face. Although we just came back from the Great Lakes, where it's so amazing. Anybody here spend time in the Great Lakes? Okay, so freshwater. I'll talk about the race and WinQuest and everything in a minute, or OC86. But the funniest thing is that we finish and there's bugs in a lot of places. In Lake Michigan, there's extra bugs, and it was super stupid light. And we had flies and moths, and the boat was gross. And we get to the dock and we have our hose, but there's no spigot. I'm like, how are we going to wash the boat? And I'm obsessing about how to wash the boat. And then I walked, after about 10 minutes, I went, it's fresh water. We have buckets. So we got the buckets, and then we were just washing the boat with the soap and the water and the scrub brushes and buckets. But I had a boat full of a lot of saltwater sailors who have never really scooped up a bucket of water off the deck of a boat. And I challenge you, it was like watching a cat with mice on greased floors. It was like they throw it and it would splash and it would tip over, and then they didn't know how to pick it up. They lost 2 buckets and we had to go diving to pick them up off the bottom. Good news is the water in Mackinac is so clear that you could see the bottom. So anyway, that was a hilarious little funny story. I want to wrap up and on that. You guys are welcome to interrupt and ask any more questions verbally or in the chat as well. But the kind of cool thing about the Midwest Maxi program that we just did and how this connections and how I see the future going. So back in 1980 something, there was a boat called WindQuest that was owned by the DeVos family, and Doug DeVos was steering it. And I was the boat captain of a fiberglass boat. Actually, it was fiberglass. One of the first composite boats, a 50-footer. And we were doing the last race of a series in the Great Lakes, and I was on my way out to see my boyfriend who ran Gem, which was another 50-footer. And WindQuest ran in and took out the back corner of my boat. Bang, they were aluminum, we were composite. That was not good. And I may have yelled very inappropriately at the helmsperson, who happened to be a guy named Doug DeVos. So we've stayed friends over the years, both from Michigan, both still sail. Obviously, he has a little different job than I do. And he came out here to OakCliff 3 years ago, and he told that story to all the kids about what I had said to him like 35 years ago when he ran into my boat. And he met our kids that had just come back from Halifax. And we had sent 3 teams of far 40s up to race offshore from Marblehead to Halifax. And he was just blown away by the fact that these tiny people had just raced far 40s offshore and done it all themselves. The provisioning, the safety officer, the navigation, the engine, changing the oil, all of that. So and then we also partnered with American Magic. About a year later, I got a text. Dawn, does OakCliff want WindQuest? Now it's an 86-foot maxi boat with water ballast. I was like, yes, please. And so then he donated it. He started the donation in 2019, COVID hit. And so then we postponed it to this year. And we just took 22 people from Chicago to Mackinac and 22 people from Port Huron to Mackinac. The first race, it was super light air. We were doing great until we got caught into 3 high pressures, and literally the whole rest of the fleet, it was like a fence of high pressures. They caught up to us. Saw Doug and Maria at the Pink Pony, which is the bar. And I probably got like 17 hugs from them. They were so excited that we had won the race, or not, we'd gotten line honors. We did not win uncorrected. But if you watch, there's a T2P TV video that's going to be coming out in it. And I'm pretty sure they have the clip of when they came up, and I was exhausted because I had broken my arm 3 days before. And I was kind of tired and I couldn't go down below because I couldn't hold on. So I slept on deck for the race. And so I was exhausted, and they came up, they started talking to me and asking me questions. And I was just like, you need to talk to somebody else. I was like, grinders, come over and talk to the TV cameras. And our average grinder height was probably 5'4", and our average grinder weight was probably right around 125. And they all come over and like, show them the muscles. And these little girls are like, I got muscles. So it was amazing. And that message got out that we weren't doing it like just putting a couple of kids on and a couple of people. Like we had Fritz, who's autistic. We had Esteban, we have Jasmine, we have racial diversity, gender diversity. And it's really amazing to see they saw it. It was genuine. It was real. We only had myself and 2 other pros on the boat out of 22. And those are big boats. So then everybody's like, that's awesome. That's great. So then we go down to Port Huron and we're feeling a little bit cocky because the name of the boat, we had to change it. Of course, they kept WindQuest. And the guys over here at the office were like, we should do it. We should do graphics, like, because we named it OC86. So like, we should do like Rambler 88. And so they were drawing it up on the whiteboard. And I was like, OC86, but it should be sexy. So the name of the boat is OC86. But if you look at the photos, there's a little word in italics, sexy. So we were feeling a little bit, proud of ourselves. And we come out of the river and Black River to go under the Blue Water Bridge to go up to the start line. We're on time. It's raining. We're like, we're going anyway. We're on time. We're on schedule. Everybody's doing something. And we run aground. And the only way we got off was because a 1,000-foot freighter came down. And so all of these lessons learned, there's no tide in the freshwater in the Great Lakes. You can't wait for the tide to come up. The current's pushing you down onto the sandbar that you've just gone around. But when a freighter comes, it pushes so much water that it raises the water level 6 to 10 inches, and we're able to bounce off and go. And of course, we had a meeting. I was like, everybody on deck, and they were ready for me to scream. And I'm like, we just made a dumb ass move, but it was a group effort. We are all dumbasses because there's at least 10 of us that could have looked at the nav station for the depth because there was 2 navigators there. The old boat captain could have reminded the new boat captain that we're in freshwater, not saltwater, so the red's on the other side. I could have, with my broken hand, gotten my navionics up earlier. The local people could have looked out the window. I said, but you know what? That's what we do. That's what we learn. We're going to go out. We're going to check and make sure that the keel is still attached, that there's no cracks. And then we're going to put the sails up and we're going to go racing. Now, 2 things happened. One, when we went down to look to make sure the keel was still attached, we found the suction cups that the diver had left attached to the boat. So that was a bonus that we didn't sail with suction cups attached to our boat. And we put the sails up and we sailed and we took it serious, and we found literally sunshine between 2 storms and a front, where the TP-52s up over our shoulder got the crap beat out of them. We went bareheaded took down our spinnaker, and the TP-52 to leeward of us, their mast fell down. And we went through, we only saw 38 knots of wind, and we sailed through. We put up the number 4. We stayed close to shore. Every time we had to turn for the course, we got a 10-degree turn, a 10-degree lift, a 10-degree turn, a 15-degree lift. We only tacked 3 times in that race, and we smashed the record by over 2.5 hours. So it was like, yeah, we got this. Now, of course, we still have to get the boat out. It's stuck in Buffalo in 60 knots of wind right now while we're waiting to take the mast down so we can go out to St. Lawrence. But what an experience, and what an unbelievable gift that Doug has given to us, and what an amazing group of people and young people that have that experience that was virtually impossible 5 years ago. And that's where I want to close on, is that I see at OakCliff, we shut down March 5th of 2020. We created a bubble. We have shirts that say no strangers were licked, because I had to keep teenagers and young adults inside this bunkhouse and this bubble. I would go to the grocery store in full foul weather gear and face mask and shop for 11 to 20 people, depending on who was on site. We had testing protocols. We had, it was really strict. And so it was, for everybody, COVID kind of sucked, but we feel like we beat this. It's like we won a race, and we're moving forward, and we're seeing so much energy. And it gave us time to realize that when there's important people here doing important things, it's bigger than a broken arm. It's bigger than a pandemic. We're changing lives for the better. And I want to keep that moving forward with OakCliff, with American Magic, with 11th Hour Racing, and hopefully we can translate that into the Olympics. I truly believe if you're a good human and you do everything you possibly can every moment of every day to try to get faster and better, you're going to win accidentally. The winning's easy. The hard work is to keep your head in the game 24/7. So there's my philosophy for, Wednesday night, 10 o'clock, East Coast time.
Well, bravo. Thank you. Hey, Dawn, we can do this off camera. You may know about this. We have at the Sausalito Yacht Club, we have a very strong connection with Club Naval in Cascais, Portugal, our youth sailing exchange. I'll send you an email in the morning.
Okay.
great program, great people in Cascais, diverse, really good people and well-funded. And maybe we can do some work together, but that's a different topic. But
Okay.
thank you very much, really.
Well,
Wonderful.
yeah, feel free to talk about OakCliff because it's 15 and above. We actually have a high performance high school. So we have a high school, which is, it's kind of like a remote high school, but we have a learning coach on site. And whenever they're not doing physics, well, they're actually doing physics by trimming to sail.
Right.
They're doing real life apprenticeship, hands-on, and sailing, as well as going to school. So we have in the winter high school, in the summer training programs, and 15 and above. We do need-based scholarships. If you can afford, you pay, and you help somebody who can't afford.
Well, that's a good one. And it's OakCliff, oakcliff.com, something like that.
oakcliffsailing.org.
I'll look it up. Thank you.
Yep.
Oops. Oops.
Sorry.
Oh, it's just, it cut out. My sound cut out.
Okay.
But it's okay. But OakCliff, how are you funded?
We are I'm typing this in here. We are a public nonprofit. So we take donations. The way I designed it, with my experience with America True, working with the YMCA, with different things, is that we, all of our programs should be cost neutral. So we have tuition that helps with the scholarships. Our match racing entry fees cover our hard cost. It does not cover our overhead. So we fundraise for our overhead and we fundraise for our scholarships. As a matter of fact, America True, the foundation is still in existence, but that is going to be rolled into OakCliff. And there's going to be about $150,000 worth of scholarship funds that will be held in a donor-directed fund specifically for graduates of community sailing. So graduates of those true youth events, like in India Basin and Fort Worth or Fort Walton Beach and Chicago and different places.
Thank you.
All right.
Very
Okay.
good. Any other questions?
Zillions, but I bet she.
You can, so race, R-A-C-E is my email, race@oakcliffsailing.org. Hey, you guys, come here, say hi to Sausalito Yacht Club. Quick, 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 quick.
Race at what?
oakcliffsailing.org. These are the kids. They're supposed to be exhausted. This is Esteban. He was on the OC86. You're from California, right?
Yeah,
Say where?
I'm from Long Beach, California.
There you go.
We're in Sausalito, California. If you're up in Sausalito, come by the Sausalito Yacht Club, please.
I will. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I will.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, what are you guys doing?
Ice cream run.
Ice cream run. Go.
Okay. Well, Dawn, thank you. Thank you for what you've done. Thank you for what you're doing. And thank you for what you will do. And I'll be in contact with you regarding the club and Cascais and our liaison. Okay.
Wonderful.
And
Wonderful.
it's a pleasure and an honor to have you as a member of Sausalito Yacht Club.
Thank you. It's
Okay.
wonderful. Thanks.
You're fantastic. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, Dawn. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.